Hello, welcome along to a brand new episode of Writer's Routine. This week, our guest is Kate McKean. Kate has worked as a literary agent for a while, helping all types of writer get published. And she's on with a crash course in how it works. You can hear how she's managed to write a book filled with tips on making it happen. We talk about why she knew she could give help on the common feelings that writers get.
What I can give is both the how-to and then the support, because so many of the feelings in writing are common. You have that voice in your head. You're like, no one's going to read this. I'm horrible. Like, everybody has that at some point. And you're like, that's normal. Everybody thinks that. It's not true. So that intersection of emotions, feelings, and the how-to was where I was like, this is where I can carve out a niche.
And she chats about what she's looking for as an agent.
I am looking to forget I am reading query letters. I'm looking to be sometimes transported, sometimes distracted, sometimes, escapism, sometimes, blown away by prose. It's never one thing because we all read different books for different reasons. So I'm looking to forget that this is a manuscript and it to feel like a book. And that doesn't mean it has to be done, but that you have started on the path of this world exists and I'm taking you with me.
It's all on the way with Kate McKean in a brand new episode of Writer's Routine. This week's episode is sponsored by the Quick Book Reviews podcast. If this show takes you behind the scenes of writing books, Quick Book Reviews takes you into what makes them brilliant. It uncovers so much about your favourite writers. For the last 6 years, Philippa, who has created and hosts the show, has been chatting to some of the biggest authors around and discovering their newest work for you. If you're a reader looking for new book recommendations and getting to know your favourite writers, this is the perfect podcast for you. In-depth chats and spoiler-free book reviews in perfect bite-sized chunks to fit easily into your day. You've got recent episodes in there with Mark Billingham, Adele Parks, Steve Kavanaugh, and this week, Dan Brown is on it. Dan Brown, responsible for one of the biggest publishing moments of the year. He is on this podcast. You can hear all about his new book. Philippa gets into all the fun questions too, finding out what authors like to eat, where they want to go on holiday, and the gossip about bits of their lives that you won't find anywhere else. I think it's the perfect complement to this show. Get involved and catch up on it now, so you're ready for a bumper series of episodes featuring Paula Hawkins on the way, Janice Hallett, Ken Follett too. The Quick Book Reviews podcast is a light-hearted look at authors and what you might love about their brand new book. And you can get 2 new episodes a week wherever you listen to your shows. Just search for the Quick Book Reviews podcast. Yes. Welcome to the show then. My name's Dan Simpson. This is Writer's Routine, where we take a look inside an author's working day. This week, our guest is Kate McKean. Kate works as a literary agent and has built a diverse client list of New York Times bestselling authors in all genres from fantasy and YA, humour and horror. And, well, Kate started a newsletter a little while back with all the backstage secrets of agent life and tips on how you can get published. And now she's got a book out with even more advice in it. It's called Write Through It, an insider's guide to publishing and creative life. It's filled with the help that you need to get an agent yourself. Kate is not the type of guest that we would, I guess, normally have on the show, in that I don't think she's written a novel, but she's got this book out. But she's helped so many writers get published that I think there's a lot in there. And I thought, well, we've just finished summer. Maybe you took a little writing break. You're getting back into it, having a really productive winter. So this might be a perfect moment for some inspiration for you. It will give you the motivation that you need to get that manuscript finished and to get that agent signed. We run through it as we normally would, with the routine, with the workspace, and we go into detail about what life is like in the industry. You can hear how she planned a book like this, but so much to talk about. How do you whittle it down and get it into a shape? Also, we uncover everything about what a literary agent does and how important that first sentence is. It's all on the way, and we start as we always do with Kate McKean and what she sees around her in the place where she sits down to write.
I see a large monitor and a small monitor and a very messy desk full of electronics and books and fidget toys and pens.
So are you someone who needs to be surrounded by clutter?
No, I would much prefer not to be, but I would prioritize writing over cleaning.
Around you, the nature of your book is quite practical, so I imagine there might be post-it notes and tip points and threads of where things are going.
I like to keep things in a notebook. I want it to be tucked away when I'm not doing writing, so that it won't distract me from my other many jobs. So I like to have a project notebook. So if I'm going to write a whole book, it's going to be in one notebook. Of any size. I don't have one specific notebook that I like. I like a lot of ones. I really like to buy notebooks in museum shops because they're special and fun, and it's a good reason to buy a souvenir that you're actually going to use. But I'll have my one dedicated notebook for the project, and I'll open it up and maybe look at it. There's occasionally, maybe I will look at it. But if it's there, and if I know it's there, then I know I can use it if I need to.
And all around you as well, what is there that's maybe inspirational for you, that reminds you where you are, who you're with, maybe where you'd like to end up?
Oh, I have a small office in our Brooklyn apartment, and I have floor-to-ceiling bookshelves on one wall to my left, and it literally is, let's see, 12 feet of bookshelves at both directions, maybe 10 by 12. And they're full of both the books that I want to read or have read and the books that I represent as a literary agent. And it reminds me that you can do it. Like all the really hard points in the writing process, every single person who wrote a book on my shelf did it. Like they went through that hard point, they came out the other end.
And we'll come to this a bit later in what you've distilled and learned as a literary agent and how that's helped you. But the idea of perseverance, the idea that you have spoken to and helped so many authors who have been through many struggles, I would imagine, in the process of getting their book out. How helpful was that for you to remember?
Oh, very, very, very. I always say that one of my primary jobs as an agent is to answer the question, is this normal? And I have seen it. I've seen all the things that are normal and not normal in a writer's life, so that when I hit those road bumps, those speed bumps, I'm like, oh yeah, that was just like when Alex did that. Oh, this is just like when Maddie did this. And it's comforting because the hard parts are hard, but hard isn't the problem. Like everything's going to be hard. And the goal is not to make things easy. It's not going to be easy. It's never going to be easy. You can do it 100 times and it's still going to be the same challenges in writing a book. But the point is to build that resilience so that when you hit the hard parts, you're like, oh yeah, this is that hard part again. Ugh, I don't like this. I would prefer not to. But you address it, you feel it. If you need to go for a walk, go for a walk. Buy more candy, whatever it is that you need to do to get through it. And then you soldier on.
The thing is, I've spoken to some authors who have published 30 novels, and still every single one, they'll be caught out in that trap of forgetting how hard it is again. It's good in theory to think, oh, Alex did this and this is what they did to get out of it. In practice, how much did that help when you were faced with those same challenges?
A lot. Honestly, a lot, because I had the same points where I was like, how do I eat? I got my edit letter back from my editor and I was like, where do I even begin? And it wasn't that I had to rewrite the whole thing, luckily. But I had to untangle a lot of knots, and it is that overwhelming feeling of like, I don't even know where to start. And my experience has been, you just start, you pick one. And then you keep, and then you do the next one. And I think that my experience and being in publishing industry in general, and maybe my therapist also has helped, that you can sit in the discomfort for a little while And you can just be like, yeah, I don't want to do this. And then you do it. Because if you don't do it, it won't get done. No one's going to write your book for you. And most of the time, no one is waiting for your book. And that's a sad, harsh thing to think about sometimes. But, even if you have a book contract, that's wonderful. They do want you to write it. If you don't write it, you have to give the money back. But if you're before that point, the only person who wants your book done is you. You don't have to do it for anybody else. You do it for yourself.
And I guess even if you've got an agent or a publisher, like this is the biggest deal in the world to you, but they have quite a few other people that they're working with. How much do you remember that when you're an agent? You try and keep in mind that this might be one of a few clients that I may have, but that one person, it's like the biggest thing in their life right now, and I need to remember that when I treat them.
I agree. I mean, I do have to make a point to remember that because I know what my to-do list looks like and my clients don't necessarily. And they're like, why haven't you answered my email? And I was like, oh, right. You don't know I have 50,000 other emails right now. Let me tell you that so that you understand. And I can say, okay, I'll talk to you on Thursday. But I think being on this side as an author has made that even a little more sharp or precious or maybe even precious, where I'm like, I'm the author waiting for the news of the thing. And I realize how it feels, and it doesn't feel great a lot of times. And so it has prompted me to check in more with my clients sometimes, just to be like, hey, I'm running late, or hi, how you doing? Or how's the writing going? Or things like that, just to check in, because I know like my agent will do that and my editor will do that, and it feels great.
And you're a double screener. What's on both of those?
I have my laptop plugged into a large monitor, and there's several chat windows. There's my group chat on one program. There's a Slack I'm in on another program. There's my text messages on another program. And then a large window of tabs in Chrome with various email inboxes open, and another tab another window with my calendar. And I just toggle back and forth. Usually a Word document of whatever I'm editing or reading or have to reference.
And when you're writing, when it's your own stuff,
oh yeah, there's that too.
do all those various tabs and messages and Slacks and Teams, do they all stay open?
No, when I'm writing, it goes away, and I try to, put on Do Not Disturb, and I try to keep myself off the internet as much as possible. Even if I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna go look up this thing in Wikipedia, I will write TK, capital of whatever. So I don't leave the confines of my Word document. I write in Word, and I like to have that the only thing open, because if there is a distraction, I will look at it, because that is easier than writing.
TK? What's TK mean?
Oh, TK is copy editor's shorthand for to come. And yes, come does not start with a K, but TC means table of contents. And there's very few words in English that have a T and a K next to each other in that order. So if you are searching for the place where you said, oh, wait, I have to go put the capital of whatever in, you can search for TK and you'll find the place that you needed to fill in the blank. So it means, hey, I don't know yet, TK, I'm going to put this in later. And
yeah, it's those small granular bits of detail that I'm going to learn so much with. Listen, so you're on Word. What strong font opinions do you have?
I'm a Times New Roman period person. That's it. That's the only font that exists. There's no other fonts in my like drafting phase. And then when there's the real book, then the experts suggest fonts, and I like them almost all the time. I don't think I've ever said, oh, I hate that font.
That's really fascinating because of where you have come to it from. Like Times New Roman is the standard, right? So some authors will write in their own font and then they'll move it into Times New Roman, but you just can't be dealing with that extra fuss.
It doesn't really matter. Like I want it to look seamless so that my brain isn't like, what, why is this different? And I have heard, and I've used very occasionally, the the trick of putting it in a different font so that you can kind of see your mistakes better, because it will look different than it had been looking to you for the whole time you've been drafting. And so if you put it in Arial or something, all of a sudden you'll realize that you have used the wrong there, you know. And I think that's a good tip if you're copy editing or if you're doing your final like read through or something like that. So I might do that if I need to, but I want it to. I don't want to notice anything but the words.
And you're in Brooklyn. It would be remiss of me to speak to someone in Brooklyn without having a look out your window. So if there is a window where you live, can we see like those terraced townhouses normally with the huge water butts on top, don't they, which kind of proliferate through the New York skyline?
Yeah, I live in a slightly different part of Brooklyn. I live in Park Slope, and my apartment is in a brownstone, so I'm on the first, which is that kind of canonical looking Brooklyn apartment building. Our apartment's on the first floor, and I have a window to the backyard in between me and my neighbor's house. So it's a kind of a little alley, but I get a lot of light. And my next door neighbor just renovated their whole apartment and their backyard. So I can see their newly planted, a sliver of their newly planted backyard, and it's lovely. And I can see a little tree in the backyards of the buildings that are behind us. And I get a lot of light. I actually have a disco ball in my window, because at about 1:00 mostly in the summer, obviously the time changes a little bit, the sun hits that disco ball and I get little sparkles of light all over the room, and it's nice. I really like that.
I tell you what, that's jazzier than I expected. The disco ball, I wouldn't have planned that with your quite methodical room.
Yeah, it's true. There's a lot of whimsy, I will say, in this room. I have the wall that is behind my monitors is full of paintings and art from clients and friends, and actually a large painting that my mom did in the 80s, and slivers of the original art for some graphic novels of my clients. I have so have you ever seen those little they're trays that letterpress printers use that people put on the wall, and they're just tiny little nooks and crannies, and they put little tchotchkes and cutesy things in it. I have one of those that is full of tiny little things, shells and toys and owls. I have a lot of owls. I like birds and I like owls. My dad's dog tags from his time in the army, pictures of my kid, rocks, mahjong tiles. So there is as I'm talking about it, I guess there is a lot going on in my room, but I also feel able to concentrate. Maybe I do like all that clutter, as I say. Maybe the clutter actually helps. I'm like learning things about myself today. I like to do it first thing in the morning. I would get up at 4 or 5 o'clock if I could. If I have had enough sleep the night before, I want it to be quiet, and nobody knocking on my door asking where their shoes are, or to make breakfast or whatever, all the things my lovely family needs, and they're capable of doing themselves. And I may put on some light music, usually wordless. Maybe piano music or ambient music, definitely wordless. And I will open my document. And if everything is going well, I will have the day before plotted out the stuff I need to do the next day, even if it is this scene, this paragraph, this section, blah, 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 1, 2, 3, and very light notes, so that when I sit down, I can hit the road running. And, I want to just keep going. I guess I will have made a cup of tea or a cup of coffee beforehand, big bottle of water. But I try to get moving, and I like to do that before the emails chime and the phone rings and things like that. And so then I'll go, if I can go for 2 or 3 hours in the best possible scenarios, I can do that. I can just kind of run. And then I'll need to stop and eat and walk around and not look at my computer for a little while. And if I'm really lucky and I have nothing else to do, I can go back and do it again for another hour or two. But I really, then my brain's mush for the rest of the day. And then it's going to be like, let's do the laundry and, throw out the mail and do chores or something that doesn't take quite as much heavy lifting with my brain. But I like to get it out of the way in the morning, and be as kind of insular and in a little capsule as much as possible.
Does that mean you have to pick and choose days that you can write? Because if your brain is turned to mush for the rest of the day, just because like creativity can be such a vigorous exercise, if it's on a day when you know that you've got like meetings with clients and you're going to have to help them with their manuscripts, that could affect things.
Yeah, it usually will be I'll do a shorter duration. Like I would for a while, especially in the drafting of this book and other books I've written, I've been able to wake up, write for an hour and a half, have another cup of coffee, and then do the rest of my day, and it isn't quite as taxing. So I could do that when I'm in full draft mode, maybe 2-3 days a week, of just like, oh, this is writing time. Nobody bother mom. Like I'm off duty. And then I can do that. And it's not super taxing, but I do have to make sure that I go to bed early enough the night before. And there's, not going out to a 3 martini lunch or too much carousing the night before, so that I can get up early and do that.
Is there an aim for what you're sitting down to write for hopefully a few hours at 5 a.m.?
Usually it might be a project specific goal. It might be 500 words. It could be 1,000 words. It could be this section. It could be that section. It really depends on the project. Some days are good and some days are bad, and that is fine. And I have to remember that some of these days too, there isn't a lot of writing because there might be outlining or brainstorming. And some of that involves my hands on the keyboard, and sometimes it doesn't. And it doesn't feel productive, but I have to remind myself every time that it is, because I'm a dedicated outliner. They can take many forms, but I really do like to know where I'm going, even if it changes as I'm drafting. And that work to create the outline is writing. It just doesn't increase your word count. And that is frustrating to me and lots of other writers. So there could be days before the drafting where I am maybe writing in a document or writing out notes, or sometimes I'll write a timeline or take a big sheet of paper, and just draw bubbles and lines connecting things. And I may not even use those documents anymore, but getting them out there into the world, out of my brain, is part of the process.
When it's a bit of a struggle, and when you've got a few days a week of like real concentrated writing and maybe it's not coming, is there anything you do to just help kind of grease the wheels?
Treats, for sure. There's pastries and coffee and bribes I can give myself. I also like to be really honest with myself that there are some days that it's not going to work. And then there's some days that I'm just tired or I'm anxious. And the tired or anxious days, or if I'm unsure where I'm going in the project, or if I know what I have to do is hard, or I'm not sure it's the right way to go, if I'm having those kind of feelings and avoiding the page, then I yell at myself and say, shut up and go write 200 words, like start. You might not get where you're going, where you want to go that day, but this is just a feeling and you have to write through it. Oh gosh, that's why I named the book that. But then there are days where I don't have it. I just don't, the brain is not going to brain. And I can be honest with myself to say, like, me sitting here for an hour beating myself up is going to be more taxing than saying, wow, I don't have it today. I'm going to go read this book for an hour, and cut myself some slack.
So just talking about the new book then, it's right through it. At what moment, because there are writing guidebooks out there, like these things exist. At what moment did you think, there needs to be one where I approach it from this angle? What was the real seed where you thought, oh, okay, this is what needs to be done?
Yeah, I started writing a newsletter at agentsandbooks.com in 2019. And I started writing it after, Well, while my agent was trying to sell my adult novel, which did not sell. And that is a normal thing that happens even to people who have been in the industry for 20 years. But I was distracting myself a little bit from the submission of the novel. And I also like to teach a lot as a literary agent. I'll do conferences. I've taught at New York University. I've done all kinds of workshops because I want to get that information out there to writers, because publishing is a weird, opaque black box of mystery to most writers. And it doesn't have to be that way. And I'm just one person with one point of view on publishing, but I can tell writers, okay, this is what I think a query letter is. And this is what happens when you get the phone call from the agent. And I wanted it out there so that people can navigate publishing better, and maybe get me better books. There was a little bit of self-interest in it, but it's useful to share knowledge. This is not a gatekeeping situation. So I started writing the newsletter. I was writing it, and I was having a great time. And there was always in the back of my mind, I was like, this could be a book. But like you said, there are many writing guides, and I had to think about what would make mine different. And as I was getting through the nuts and bolts stuff, I like to call it, this is what a contract is, this is what a option clause is. I also started talking about the feelings of what it's like to write and publish. And I didn't see that a lot of other places. And I was like, oh, okay. What I can give is both the how-to and then the support, because so many of the feelings in writing are common. You have that voice in your head. You're like, no one's going to read this. I'm horrible. Like, everybody has that at some point. And you're like, that's normal. Everybody thinks that. It's not true. So that intersection of emotions, feelings, and the how-to was where I was like, this is where I can carve out a niche for my book.
When you've got that idea, and there is so much that's running through your mind, and you have so much experience in helping other authors get to the point of publication, how on earth did you begin with trying to distill all of the questions that you want to answer and the whole process that you want to take us through? What did you build into an outline that you then worked through?
It's actually in the book. I made a spreadsheet. Sometimes my outlines are spreadsheet, especially if it's nonfiction. If it's fiction, it's usually kind of narrative. It's like paragraphs or numbered lists or something like that. But I made a spreadsheet, and it is messy. Someone helpfully told me on the internet that there's a typo in there. And that's fine, because it's actually, it's fine that there's a typo in there, because that outline is just for me. And I know what I mean. So I'm kind of glad that typo is in that section and not in another part, which I'm sure there's a typo somewhere. But it was chapters across the top and sections down the side. And I just dumped everything in there. And and in my teaching, I have kind of carved out some ruts in terms of like, okay, this is a lot of the things you need to know to do your query letter. And this is a lot of the stuff you need to know when you're looking for an agent. And this is the submission process with an agent. And this is the submission process with an editor. And so I knew the kind of syllabus off the top of my head. And so then I wrote it according to the outline. After I wrote 2 sample chapters and included a more narrative outline, not a spreadsheet, in the book proposal that I wrote for this, that my agent sent out and my editor bought. But when I was drafting the full book, I went through the outline. I was like, okay, we're going to talk about query letters today, blah, 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 blah. And then when it was done, I went back and wrote an outline from the text. So what did I actually write about? Because I got off on tangents or something occurred to me while I was writing. And so I could look and see, okay, chapter 1 has 40 bullet points and chapter 2 has 16. And you're like, oh, that's not good. That means something needs to be broken up and organized. And so I did that several times over the course of writing the book. And I think it worked really well for nonfiction. And I think I will try it for fiction again next time I complete a whole novel. Because sometimes it's hard to remember what you put on the page. and what just exists in your head.
More on the book. Like tone for something like this must be quite an interesting thing to land on, because it's not like it's a novel where it's this all-seeing eye voice. It's much more personal, but coming from a place of knowledge. You want to make it approachable, informative, but also, I would imagine, in quite a casual way, so someone can read along and not feel daunted by having a literary agent tell you exactly what you need to do. How much thought did you give to the style and the voice that you would write this in?
The voice really came out of the newsletter. My newsletter is really casual. I tell people not to tell me when there are typos in my newsletter because I'm dyslexic and they're going to be there and I don't care. I don't think that typos are a capital offense. But I use LOL and all kinds of emoticons and emojis. And I use the little emoticon that's like, it looks like a guy shrugging his shoulders and his hands out, and it's made with parentheses and, colons and things like that. And I call him my shruggy guy. And I use that a lot because that is the answer to many questions in publishing. It's like, oh, maybe. Sure. Like there aren't that many definitive things. And so when I'm saying LOL and the shruggy guy and all that stuff, it creates a certain tone. But I also want to actively demystify literary agents to people. People are terrified of me sometimes in like conferences, or if I meet a writer at an event and they're like shaking with fear, and I am 5'2" tall, and I'm not scary. I'm the least scary person I know, I think. And so I don't have the power that people think I do. I cannot take my magic wand and say, bing, you will be published. So being casual, I think, signals to people I'm a person with a job and I read books for a living.
So let's deal with some of the things that the book outlines then. I know that you want to sell the book, so I'm not expecting you to give away everything. But what are the most common questions that people come to you with, or the biggest gaps in people's knowledge of how everything works when they approach you to be an agent? I mean,
the first thing that comes to mind is what literary agents actually do and what they don't do. I think people think, they write an excellent book and they send one email and the agent will see their excellence instantly and then instantly email them back and say, wow, this is great. Tomorrow I will have a deal for you for $1 billion and you will be famous beyond recognition, beyond your wildest dreams in 5 minutes. And they think that that's what's going to happen. I guess maybe that's the best possible scenario, but they do think that, okay, all I have to do is get the agent and then everything is fine. And that is not true. I cannot force a publisher to buy a book. I sign on books I don't sell. I write books I don't sell. And so the agent is not magic, but is instead an advisor and a teammate through the process. I'm doing my best. You're doing your best. We see what happens in the world. And I don't get paid unless I sell a book. So it does not behoove me to sign up everything willy-nilly and say, oh, okay, let's give it a shot. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, see you later. I do want to build relationships with clients so that we can have a long career together of fantastic books. But I don't have the magical powers that a lot of people think.
But there are some agents, and again, like I'm in the UK, you're over in the States, people listen to this all over the place. There are some, they're not quite super agents, but I know that there are some agents that represent some of the biggest authors in the world. What have they got, and what are they doing that makes them, I guess, so useful to have as an agent? How does one differ from the other?
They have reputation. They have years of work. Every big name agent was a small time agent to begin with. And they got lucky, or they got strategic, or both. And they ended up, everybody's got that one big author that they get that changes their career. And that author begets another. And their friend says this, and their friend says that, and you get this, and you attract different levels of author or different styles, and you get known for saying, okay, I'm the big agent that does politicians work. I'm the big agent who does literary fiction. And it grows, but it grows over decades. And that's normal. And so what people are seeing is the endpoint of decades of work, where an agent can send a book out to 5 people and they have an offer in the afternoon. And it doesn't really happen like that. But there are many big agents who will send out a book and have offers in a week or a couple of days. And they're often representing celebrities, which is fine, and a whole nother kind of agenting. But, you only hear about the people who win the lottery. You don't hear about all the other people who don't.
So I've just written a book. I think it's the best, I don't know, let's say the best YA book in the history of the world. What's the first thing I do?
It's all written and you're happy with all the words on the page?
Yeah, it's perfect. I think it's perfect.
Then you write a query letter. And that query letter should tell the reader about the book and not how you think you're the best YA book in the whole entire world.
Am I personalizing this, Kate?
You can. I personally don't care if someone writes a sentence in a query letter that says, Kate, I see that you represent this author and I think that that's wonderful and that's why I'm sending you my book. I assume that if someone is sending me a query, it's because they found me and something said, hey, that would be cool, and then they should send it to me. There are people who will just send out to every single name they find, and that's fine, and they won't have a lot of success, I don't think, or they're just going to get that many more rejections, and the one agent might find them. But I don't need someone to tell me, oh, you represent YA novels. That's why I'm sending you my YA novel. I'm like, I know I represent YA novels. You don't have to tell me. But you may, if you have a good reason to personalize a query, to say, we met at a conference, or I read your client's book and it changed my life, or I listened to this podcast, or I read your newsletter, and when you said X, it really stuck with me. That's a great reason to do that. If you don't have it, then just tell me about the book.
And is that separate? Again, this is blanket, right? Is that separate to the email? Is the query letter the email, and then I've attached a little bit of my manuscript to that? Are they two separate things? The
query letter text goes in the email, and then you can attach or copy the sample material according to the agent's submission guidelines. Everybody does it a little bit differently. And we do it differently to absolutely make our writers' lives harder. It's our joy to do. But it's what we need as people, as individual readers, to evaluate a manuscript or a project. And so we all have a little bit of different workflow.
So now, irrespective of whatever the genre is, although when I was looking about you, I can see you're not a fan of gross out stuff.
No, I like horror, but not like kids fart jokes,
It's like, do not send me this. I really enjoyed that. Anyway, so irrespective of what it is, what are you looking for in the first 1,000 words of my manuscript? Is it potential? Is it a good idea? Is it maybe writing style, but the idea is not quite there?
It has to be all of the things. I am looking to forget I am reading query letters. I'm looking to be sometimes transported, sometimes distracted, sometimes, escapism, sometimes, blown away by prose. It's never one thing, because we all read different books for different reasons. So I'm looking to forget that this is a manuscript and it to feel like a book. And that doesn't mean it has to be done, but that you have started on the path of this world exists and I'm taking you with me.
And you must get so many people querying to you. Do you ever not read the manuscript because you've seen the query letter and you think, this is not going to be my bag?
Usually when it's like a genre I don't do, I'll peek at the sample pages, usually because query letters are different than manuscripts. But if someone has sent me a political thriller, I'm not going to read it because I don't do that genre.
How important does the first sentence of my manuscript need to be for you?
I think it's very important. I think that writers should spend a lot of time considering their first sentence, but I don't think that it is always make it or break it. A bad first sentence can be edited. For certainly, the book is not at the printer yet, but I think it's important. And I think that if a writer is feeling insecure about it, they could just open any book on their shelf and be like, why do I like this first sentence? Why do I not like this first sentence? And think about it in the abstract, or think about it in books that have been published, and then not try to replicate that in their own book, but try to drill down into why they liked the first sentence of whatever. My favorite first sentence in all of modern literature is from M.T. Anderson's YA novel Feed. And it's science fiction. And it's about kids who kind of have like the internet jacked into their brain. And it came out many years ago. But the first sentence is something like, on Friday, we went to the moon. On Friday, we were going to go to the moon, but the moon turned out to totally suck. And you know so much about the world in that sentence. You know, you can go to the moon. You know that going to the moon is not that special. You know that you go to the moon for fun. I just love it. I love that sentence so much.
We're back with more from Kate in just a sec. This week's episode of the podcast is supported by the Quick Books Reviews podcast. Bite-sized book reviews and author interviews that you can listen to, new episodes twice a week. And there's a brand new one out with Dan Brown. Search for Quick Book Reviews podcast wherever you get your shows. And remember, a project that you've got can sponsor this show in the future. If you've published a book that needs to be shouted about, let me give it a big plug for you. Your book can sponsor this show. Your book, your project, whatever creative endeavour you're working on, we can make that happen. All you need to do is support us over on our Patreon page, patreon.com/writers routine. You can sign up for a rolling pledge there for as little as you want, for as long or as short as you want. A few dollars a month, it really helps us carry on. Your book can sponsor the show. There is even bonus content and some merch on there too. Or you can support us just as a one-off. You can send something my way and I really appreciate it. You can do that over on our Ko-Fi page, ko-fi.com/writers routine. Anything that you can send over goes such a long way to help me keep bringing you these shows. If you would like to get involved with Patreon or Ko-Fi, you can find the links in the episode notes wherever you're listening. Let's get back to it then, chatting to literary agent Kate McKean with all the tips that you need to get an agent yourself. She's got a new book out, full of advice. It's called Write Through It. If you think Stephen King's On Writing meets a book publishing crash course, this is what you've got. You can hear where future trends come from and whether it's worth trying to predict what the industry wants. Also, there's a good reminder in here that, well, agents get sent a lot of stuff. Some good, some bad, so don't worry about yours. Don't fret, just get it sent. And let's pick it up with, well, your work. Say you've got it done finally. The manuscript is finished. It's ready to go. What happens next?
If I like the sample, I will ask for the full manuscript, and then I'll read the full manuscript. And one of the signs that I know something is good for me is that I think about the editors who I want to send it to. If I'm already like, oh my gosh, so-and-so will love this book, that's a sign to me that I actually have a plan of how to submit the book into the publishing world. And that's always a good sign. And I won't make a submission list, before I even talk to the author, but I'll make a note, maybe I'll jot down some notes or something like that. And then I like to, in my head, practice how I might pitch a book to an editor before I've even talked to the author. Because if I can do that seamlessly, then I know I am ahead of the game. If I wish I could pitch it a certain way and it's not quite there, or I need to ask the author, did you mean this? Or do you want what? Maybe there's some editorial notes. Then I will still be positive about the book and then email the author. Hey, hi, I'm really interested in this. Let's set up a time to chat. And that conversation is a place for them to ask questions about me and for me to ask them questions about the book and themselves and to see if we have a rapport. Or, they have to see if they want to talk to me too. I think that the author actually holds a lot of power when talking to an agent because the author can say no. And I know that blows the minds of many authors out there who say, if I get to the point where an agent is calling me, I'm not going to say no. But you can, and you should, if you're like, wow, this person does not get my book. They're like, wow, they want me to change all of these characters into llamas, and I don't want to. You should not sign with that agent. But if things are moving smoothly and I feel confident after that conversation, I will then either, if I think there needs to be a lot of revision, I might say, hey, if you feel like doing this work, I would love to read it again after you're done. I don't often do that, but I sometimes do that. And if I think that it's really good, I want to, kind of throw my hat in the ring. So I will say, okay, I would love to work with you on this. I'm going to send you our agency agreement. Please read it over. Let me know if you have questions. And I don't make them say yes to me on the phone. They should go and they can talk to some of my clients. They should talk to their friends. And if there are other agents reading, they should go to those agents and say, hey, I have an offer of representation. Do you want in? Because, that creates competition for me, but that's okay. That's my job. And I would rather the client have the best agent. Maybe that's me. Maybe it's not. So I feel fine encouraging the client to give me some competition if they have it. If they want to sign with me right away, they can say yes, and I will happily accept. So that works out too sometimes.
So let's say you make me an offer. I think I've written the best thing ever. How prepared do I need to be that there will be some, even if it's not wholesale changes, even if you don't want to make every character a llama, that I will work with you and perhaps an editor that to get this in a state that's ready to be sent out? Is it quite frequent that that needs quite a lot of changing to get to a place, even if fundamentally everything is still the same?
It does vary from book to book. I have definitely been like, hey, listen, the ending is too short. Can you expand on it a little bit? And then they do that and it's great. And we go. And sometimes I've edited a book 4 or 5 times, with a client before submission. I don't tend to do that 4 or 5 rounds of edits as much anymore. I just don't have time. And I'm not in a position in my career where I am going to pull a lot of diamonds out of the rough. I don't have the time to, but I may really like a concept or I may really like an author and I'm saying I'm willing to put the work in. And so I would definitely, if I had a client who was like, oh, well, my book is perfect as is, I would have a very deep conversation with them about how it's probably not, and that is okay. And there will be many rounds of edits going forward. And if you don't like that, then traditional publishing might not be for you. But usually authors are like, oh, please tell me how to fix my book. I will do anything.
How much do we need to think about the state of the industry in the, if there have been 50,000 books about dragons recently, will the industry kind of be done with that? Are they going to be keen with that? Do we need to think about, do publishers frequently buy novels? Does it all happen in a big week? Run us through that side of you trying to sell it.
There are a couple of times of year that are slower than others. There's the London Book Fair, which many of us in the Estates go to London for. The Frankfurt Book Fair, these are rights book fairs where many countries and publishers get together and say, hey, who wants the translation rights to this? The month of August is a little bit slow. Most people in your country and mine go on vacation then. And the month of December, not heavy traffic. But from a writer's point of view, those things don't matter. You should send your book out when it's ready.
And you selling it, sorry, Kate, you selling it, if it's not one of these big festivals, is it a case of you almost sending the same email that I've sent you towards a publisher that you think might be on board? Is there a bigger tender process than that?
Oh, well, I wouldn't be going into the Frankfurt Book Fair and approaching U.S. editors. I send those from my desk all year round. But the editors are often very busy in those points, and they will be slower to respond to what I have sent them. So I make a submission list of the editors I think will like a book. And there are various rules in each individual publishing house about who you can send to at the same time or not. And I know them, and I make a spreadsheet, and I try to, my lists are often big. I don't send to the top 2 people. I want to give a lot of people a chance to do this. I want my author to have a lot of chances. We're going to get mostly rejections. That is true all the time for everybody. And so I will write a pitch letter that I send with the manuscript. And sometimes it borrows from an author's query letter when it was very, very good. And sometimes things have changed, or I have a different take on it, or the author wrote a query letter and I'm writing a submission letter, and they can be slightly different. So I would say I probably write it from scratch most of the time. And then I send those all out to the editors at the same time. They don't know who else is getting it. And then they've got to read it and get back to me. And if someone jumps early, if someone sees it in their inbox and was like, "Ooh, I'm going to read this right now," that can speed up the process. But very often it takes a long time because editors are very overworked and don't have the in-house support that they could have. And it just takes a long time to read a book. It'll take, it takes me a week to read a book. And they will get, dozens of submissions a month.
There are trends in what seems to be published kind of 10 or so years ago. Post Gone Girl, there was a lot of those type of psychological thrillers out there. If I just really want to get a book out there, right? If I'm desperate to be published, have my book on a shelf, is there any point in me trying to second guess maybe what the industry wants? Or is it a case of just me writing the book that I want to write and hoping there is a place for it?
Yeah, I counsel my clients to not be desperate for that publication deal. I have been there, and all those books didn't work. And maybe that was why, maybe other reasons were why. But I think that for the most part, if you see a trend on the shelf, if you see, there were, even Gone Girl, there was a movie, that book was written many years before it appeared on the shelf. And then it was submitted to editors, usually 2 to 3 years before you see it on the shelf. And so editors have all read the Gone Girls already. And so if you're going to start yours the day that Gone Girl comes out, or the Dragon Book, or the whatever it is, you're 2 to 5 years behind, because it will take you several years to write a book. Usually, some people can do it quickly, but it'll still take most of a year. And then you're behind. So I think it is a better use of authors' time not to chase trends, but to show me something new that I think that could be the next trend. And then the extra bonus is you write what you love.
Just a couple more questions to finish off. I feel, sorry is the wrong word, I feel for authors at the moment because, 20, 30 years ago, the marketing of a book was, you wrote maybe newspaper articles, you did it that way. Maybe you went on radio shows or talk shows and you could do it through that. At the moment, there's so much for an author to do to sell their book. Maybe they're coming on my podcast like you. Maybe they're doing TikToks. Maybe they're doing online blog book tours. Now, there's good and bad because of that. It's good because it's now a lot more of your responsibility and there's so many opportunities. But it's bad because it's a lot more of your responsibility. And really, you might just be a brilliant author and you might not be fantastic at actually selling the thing when it's out there. How much thought does an author need to give to making their work stand out in all those different ways now? A
lot, unfortunately. I agree with you. It's much different than it used to be. And the author is taking on a lot of marketing and publicity work. My my marketing and publicity team at Simon & Schuster is so amazing, and they work their tails off, and I'm so grateful. And I'm also doing a lot of work because together that's what it takes to break out in the market that we have right now, because there are so few places that publicize books or have, so few newspapers, especially here, that have dedicated book sections. And everybody's vying for attention. And the only thing people are really looking at is social media with a lot of regularity, which is actually not totally true, but it's the easiest place that an author can reach their readers, where they might already be. And so the thing that takes the pressure off, I think, to me, is that you don't actually have to be that good at it. I don't do TikTok. I've made a couple of, videos on Instagram. And I was worried and wrote about it in my newsletter I'm not going to edit these huge videos. I don't have time. I don't want to, get camera ready and talk and to be like, oh, buy my book, etc. And a lot of people in the comments were like, you don't have to. There are lots of ways to do videos where you're not showing your face, which is easier. And that kind of underproduced thing looks more authentic. And so I have been able to kind of throw together a couple of videos that were fun to do. And then that was great. And they did whatever they were going to do. And the thing is that there's no science to what you can do and how it will perform. And so the only thing is to do what you like and go where your readers might be, and do your best. And it is always a lot of work. It's a lot of work for everybody all the time. And I understand when writers are resentful of that work, but it's part of the job, unfortunately.
And I guess it's always worth saying there are always those authors, someone like Sally Rooney over here in the UK, where you won't hear anything from her. She's going to publish a book, will do a bit of publicity for it, and kind of lock herself away in Ireland and write a new one that will come out 4 years later. And then it's the biggest thing in publishing. So there are always, it might not be yours, but you can always aim for that groundbreaking phenomenon that takes over. The last question, I guess it's maybe one of inspiration, because a problem that I think a lot of authors have is maybe they think, well, my book isn't worth your time as an agent, right? I don't want to approach you because you must get hundreds of pictures. Why would mine stand out? So I just wanted to ask you, maybe in a bid to make those more nervous writers a bit more confident, do you get sent some absolute dross?
Of course. Oh, yeah. Of course. Life is a rich tapestry. There are so many things out in my inbox, and some of them are great that I can't sell. Some of them are not great that I could sell. Some things are, it'll just be my opinion about it. And I think that if you are worried that an agent is going to be mad at you or resent you for wasting their time, then that is actually a feeling that you're having about the world and not about agents. And that you can work on that with yourself and your approach to the world. Because the worst thing that is going to happen from a literary agent is that they reject your work. They are not going to send you a failing grade. They are not going to write how silly and dumb you are in an email. They're going to say, no, thank you. And that is going to happen dozens and dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of times. It is guaranteed. So the worst thing is guaranteed to happen. And that's okay, because it happens to everybody that way. I actually want to write in my newsletter next week or so soon about like getting comfortable with rejection. Everybody gets rejected all the time. Me, you, everybody, all the time. It is the most common thing in publishing. And if that's the thing you're the most scared of, then work on that. But an agent is not going to be rude or laugh at you or anything like that. That would, and if they did, then don't ever contact them again.
And that is it with Kate McKean in this week's Writer's Routine. Her brand new book is Right Through It, an insider's guide to publishing and creative life, stuffed full of tips from a literary agent on how you can get published. And this week's episode has been sponsored by the Quick Book Reviews podcast, a light-hearted look at authors and what you might love about their new book. Dan Brown stars in the newest episode. You've got 2 new ones a week. Take a listen, search the Quick Book Reviews podcast wherever you get your shows. We'll have a new guest on next week. You can also support us on Patreon and Ko-Fi, and I will see you next week for a brand new Writer's Routine. Until then, thanks for listening.